lightning, which traveled down the rocket's exhaust to the ground, knocking the spacecraft's main electrical system offline. The obscure SCE switch wasn't designed for this situation, but it works.
Thank God for mission control. Thank God for mission control. I didn't have any idea what to do.
Pete Conrad broke out in nervous laughter.
You know what it did? I know what it is.
He laughed all the way into orbit.
Light on the floor so many lights are there, I couldn't read them all.
Apollo 12 went on to make the second moon landing. In the control center, John Aaron's call, SCE to AUX, became legendary.
If you took a poll of all of the people and asked them who is the most capable flight controller to ever sit in mission control, I think the majority of them would say John Aaron.
Five months later, Apollo 13 astronauts Jim Lovell, Jack Swigert, and Fred Haise are on their way to the moon. After 2 successful landings, Mission Control is confident.
We were feeling pretty good about what we did, although a lot of us had a lot of guarded humble, because it's dangerous business.
How dangerous will soon become clear. No one realizes it, but there is a ticking time bomb aboard Apollo 13. Inside a liquid oxygen tank, there is a heater and fan to stir up the supercold mixture. Unknown to everyone, the wiring is damaged. April 13, 1970, nearly 56 hours into the flight. Gene Kranz's team is about to go off shift. Before they do, they request a cryostir. Turn on the oxygen tank fan.
13, we'd like you to stir up your cryo tank. Okay, stand by. Houston, we've had a problem here. Can say again, please. Houston, we've had a problem. Main bus undervolt.
Main bus undervolt, a power failure. No one knows it, but the bad wiring in oxygen tank 2 has caused an explosion. At first, the astronauts in Mission Control think it's only a power failure.
My initial gut reaction was, hey, we're going to solve this problem, get back on track, and then keep driving towards the moon.
Then astronaut Jim Lovell reports something even worse.
Now, looks to me, looking out the hatch, that we are venting something. Crew thinks they're venting something. We are venting something out into space.
To this day, I don't know why I did it, but I looked out the window, the side window, and I could see escaping at a high rate of speed a gaseous substance. We were losing our oxygen.
And this now triggered me to a survival mode, when the only thought on your mind is survival and you're trying to find a way to make it for the next few minutes.
They don't understand what's wrong. All they know is they're losing oxygen and power.
Okay, now let's everybody keep cool. Let's solve the problem, but let's not make it any worse by guessing.
But they can't solve it. The command module's power is dying. They switch to emergency batteries, but these will only last a few hours. Kranz orders Econ Cy Liebergott, in charge of electrical and environmental systems, to get help.
Econ, have you called in your backup Econs now? See if we can get some more brain power in this thing? We got one here. Roger.
One of the first backup Econs to arrive is John Aaron.
I watched what they were doing a few times. I said, guys, you're wasting our emergency batteries. We're going to have to power the command module down and turn it off.
I'd like you to go down that power down procedure until you get
That was a big, big step. It never powered down a command module or any of the major spacecraft.
That's right.
They have no choice. The emergency batteries will soon run out, and they need them for re-entry. To save them, they'll have to turn off the command module, their mothership.
It became apparent that the inevitable was facing us, that we were going to lose this mothership.
The crew moves into the lunar lander, the LEM. It will be their lifeboat. The command module, the only piece that can bring them home, is turned off to save its batteries.
Now we know there's no more going to the moon. We also know it's going to be damn tough, maybe impossible, to get this crew back home.
NASA reacts like any family after an accident. All over America, phones begin ringing. At contractors' offices and Mission Control, engineers not on shift come in to get the latest news, to help, or just be there.
I'll never forget it going run up those steps. I didn't even know what was going on. I said, man, I bet you I'll never be the same when I come out of this place. I knew it, and I wasn't.
At this moment, Gene Kranz calls his mentor, Chris Kraft.
I knew it was serious when I walked in the room. The electricity was here, the smoke was here, the environment was here, that these guys were under the gun.
And he walked to me at the console. I was busy, and I says, Chris, we're in deep shit.
April 1970, 200,000 miles from Earth, Apollo 13 is crippled, the crew's survival in doubt. After losing its power, the command module has been turned off. Astronauts Jim Lovell, Jack Swigert, and Fred Hayes huddle in the lunar lander. It can keep them alive, but with no heat shield or parachutes, it can't bring them home.
That can't be.
If we didn't come up with some answers darn quick, not only wouldn't there be a landing, this crew might not come back to Earth.
If the crew can be saved, it will take the entire Mission Control team.
In the trench, it was our job to speed up their return back to Earth. The systems guys then had to figure out how they could get their systems to sustain life on board their spacecraft for as long as they could.
An hour after the explosion, Gene Kranz's team goes off shift. Glenn Lunny comes on. One of his first steps is a critical engine burn. Without the burn, Apollo 13 will swing around the moon, miss the Earth, and remain in space forever.
My choice was to go ahead and get it done so to give at least that sense of comfort to the team and to the crew.
We're burning 40%. Okay, Clay, you're looking good.
The burn works. At least the spacecraft is on a path that will take it back to Earth.
It was still a long way from being home, but we'd taken our first step, big step, back out of this hole.
Glenn was the one who sort of restored order to the room and got us thinking on an even keel.
Throughout NASA and at contractors all across America, engineers try to figure out how to stretch power, water, consumables. In the lunar module, the LEM, the astronauts hunker down, keeping lights and heat off to save batteries.
There wasn't enough thermal blankets, so this thing cooled down. So I got a lower urinary tract infection, chills and fever. Of course, the chills part got very bad with the temperature environment we had.
As Fred Hayes gets sicker and sicker, temperatures drop near freezing. In Mission Control, Gene Kranz has assembled his team in a back room.
I said, okay, everybody listen up. We have never lost an American in space, and we sure as hell aren't going to lose one now. You have to believe it, your team has to believe it, and we are the ones that must make it happen.
The key will be powering up the dead command module. Only it has the heat shield and parachutes for re-entry.
This was a cold cutoff, and it was going to be a cold startup in space. And that had never been done before. So that's what Kranz had to, his team had to go figure out. How do you do that?
The command module's batteries have only 2 hours, so it will have to be turned on at the last minute, just before re-entry, without wasting a drop of battery power.
This whole thing came down to electricity. Electricity was the constraining resource.
So I elected John Aaron to basically become the power manager for the remainder of the mission.